I think in general, like Americans, like we are all like consumers, and that is like our bodies are consumers in a lot of ways. Like we've kind of gone through the development of such a massive middle class that we are kind of like a different, I don't know, political being in the sense that's kind of encapsulated as consumer, right? And our relation to politics is through that. We consume politics like we consume any other good and service and commodity. And so a lot of people, when they're relating to what you're talking about with like a war, the way that they're relating to it and like interacting with it politically is as a consumer, is as like picking sides, is as seeing it as a movie play out with like, oh, I'm siding with MBS and I'm being stratego about it. And I'm like, blah, 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 like running through these kind of like massive geopolitical like games that of course have no bearing on reality. I mean, you know, some kid sitting at home watching a Twitch stream in fucking, I don't know, whatever, like San Antonio, wherever you are, like, you know, couldn't be further from like any decision-making body in Belgium, right? But like, you know, it kind of, or like, you know, couldn't be further from the far reaches that like U.S. empire like hits with just like a flick of the fucking whip of the Federal Reserve raising rates. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, but the only way for them to kind of attach any kind of like, I mean, I feel this myself. I'm not like putting this on people because I do think that it's something to really grapple with as Americans trying to understand politics specifically on an international level. Like, you know, there is no like, how do you affect anything on that level? You can't. The only way to kind of interact with it is through these channels. It's what we've kind of like fed people into and what we've kind of created, right? So I you know, I feel like two minds of it where it's like, that's how I always am. You know me, I'm like very sympathetic to like, almost to a fault.
You love
sometimes.
the losers.
Yeah.
I mean,
but I get it. Like, I fucking get it, especially when you're like a young kid looking
for
answers, especially with something as confusing and upsetting and difficult to process as like fucking war, not to mention
war.
Possibly nuclear world war.
Because that's the thing, you know, at the conference, so they talked about the threat of nuclear war a lot. And guess what? There is a huge threat of nuclear war right now.
Yeah.
You know, but at the same time, who's got us closer to nuclear war? Who was the guy sending weapons to Ukraine back before there was a war? Who was the guy who got us out of the nuclear treaty? It was Trump.
Of course.
Trump isn't going to save us from nuclear war. MAGA communism isn't going to save us from nuclear war.
No.
None of these people are going to save us from nuclear war. But if you're scared of nuclear war, where do you turn?
Yeah.
And it is sort of an indictment.
Well,
like the reason why they have any audience is because there's nowhere to go if you are scared of these things and you're opposed to these things and you want to feel like you can affect them.
Yeah.
But if you have a little perspective in history, you do know that that's not where to go.
Yeah.
There's very little you can do.
Well, I mean, to be clear, LaRouche did try to prevent nuclear war, well, a two-sided nuclear war by coming up with these Star Wars Strategic Defense Initiative, Star Wars program. But yeah, no, I mean, that's the thing. It's like, it's like, I think it's part of the nature of the way war is fought now too. I mean, Liz, like you're talking about with Syria, like early Syria stuff. Like,
this mirrors a lot of that in a lot of ways.
Yeah, like if you look at the way, Ukraine is essentially a proxy war, right? Like
yes,
we can all say that now, but
yeah, people do. What do you get mad?
Early
at? You
on,
that a few months ago.
Yeah, you said that in February. People
Oops,
get mad.
I hit my face with the microphone there.
Karma.
But, it mirrors that in a lot of ways because I think it's just the nature of the way war is fought. Now, like, people always talk about, how come we had this big anti-war movement in the 1960s? Well, the obvious reason was that there was a draft in the 1960s. And my most LaRouche type crazy guy opinion is needs to be a draft again because then you create a proletarian base within the army. And you actually give some people some stake, and so they'll be against joining any kind of war.
And that's why there'll never be a draft again in the United States.
There's a reason that the ruling class took away our precious draft. But yeah, it's like, it's you if you want to. I mean, with Ukraine, it's more difficult because of gas prices. But if you wanted to with Syria, you just turn off TV. You don't have to fucking think about it anymore.
Well, it's also Americans. I think for Ukraine, Europe, it's like very, I don't know.
It's different.
It's a little different. Stakes are a little bit different. Although if people like put that together, I don't know. It's going to take a second.
But it's the way that we're involved with war is like we're not sending. There's not like your neighbor isn't going over to Ukraine right now, right? You're not. There's no chance that you're going to go over to Ukraine right now, and so it's like okay, yeah, like there's these sort of like fallouts from it, like rising gas prices, this like global tension rising. Which, by the way, that second thing a lot of people can't ignore. But like, it's one of those things where it's like there isn't really this like. This is why when people complain about the fact that there's like no mass anti-war movement, it's because you actually really have to care. You know what I mean? Like you can't like it's hard to like point it out to like a random person who might not care that much about politics and have them care in the same way that they would about something like the Vietnam War, where it would like directly affect them and their friends and neighbors in like a very real immediate way. It's like it's the government figure out they don't really need to do that kind of war that much anymore.
But even like take it back even further, like take it back to Iraq, right? Like I was a kid, I was whatever it was, like 15, 14, 15, I don't remember how old I was. And like the night of, I fucking remember like Bush's ultimatum on TV. It was like March 14th or whatever it was, 12th. Like I fucking remember this. San Francisco, I'm sitting at home, my parents' house, and I was like, okay, I'm out. My parents were like, go have fun, please. Not have fun, but like, come home safe, all of that.
Yeah.
My friends went out. We're fucking out there until like 1 o'clock in the morning, shutting down Market Street. The next day, the next day, it's through the next weekend and the next couple weekends. People still cite this, the largest anti-war protest and blah, 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 blah. Everyone's out in the streets. San Francisco was a huge hotbed. New York, same way. Classic hotbeds. And nothing happened. It was nothing. And what fucking pisses me off, and like whatever, I was a kid, you don't know these things, or it doesn't matter. That was still a very formative, experience for a lot of reasons. But like to this day, people still fucking point to that and they go, well, at least, I see this all the time, at least with Iraq, people were out in the streets. And it's like, but for what?
Yeah.
To do what? And there's this sort of like, this is what annoys me, because it's like, there is no mass anti-war movement, right? And that's not because people aren't just out in the streets. Even if people were out in the streets, that wouldn't be like a mass anti-war movement, because that movement has there's no strategy for affecting anything.
Well, there's no political.
It's just for a bunch of people to feel better about themselves, sitting at home in America when they do something. Do you know what I'm saying?
I know exactly what you're saying. And Syria is an interesting lens because, I guess Syria was a different experience for you, but I tuned it out a lot in the sense that I was always on like the sort of insane communist left, reading all the WordPress blogs and everything.
Oh yeah, I love that stuff.
I love it too. But it was so hard to know what was happening.
Yeah.
Yeah,
what was actually going on. And so how can you have like any united perspective when, Syria fragmented the left immeasurably.
Yes, absolutely.
I would say even more so than what we're seeing now, which is saying a lot.
There's a little bit of that too, but it's sort of like it's already been fragmented. Now it's been splintered more.
Right.
Yeah.
In the same way that like the post-Bernie kind of like kind of confusion and craze and malaise mirrors, but even to a less degree, what happened after Occupy.
Yeah.
In which like Syria and the kind of fractioning was very much still, I think, in Occupy's shadow.
It was massive. It's gone. Like I guess one of the big reasons for those big marches, Sotto Voce, was the Answer Coalition. They organized a lot of those marches, but a lot of those people in that splintered. They were like the sort of a front group. What was it, the WWP or the PSL?
PSL.
And all those parties just splintered into 1,000 pieces over Syria.
Yeah.
Having that kind of confusion, and again, I want to bring into the confusion is, which is that like online itself, like has, if we thought that like America, particularly in American politics, that there were always, everyone loves the G word, grifters and hucksters and liars and, salesmen of all different kinds, right? Like, that's all true, but the internet has like exploded it. And these, even people with the best of intentions, I think, that they go on these platforms and they start, once you make that decision to kind of make that leap, I guess, and being that kind of personality, or even if it's subconscious in some ways, like the incentives that are built into these platforms will drive you to become more huckstery even without noticing it, I think. Because you are automatically in service of, the likes, the retweets, the followers, the whatever. That's how this thing builds. And so in order to do that, you have to kind of, up the stakes in what you're saying constantly.
Yeah.
You have to be more sure. I know this. I know that. This is this. This is that. I'm this. You know what I mean? And that's because that's what people respond to. Then you see the things going up, ding, 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 ding. And
it
then
feels good.
what?
It feels good.
Of course it feels good.
It feels great.
Yeah.
Believe me.
Of course it feels great. It's designed to. Yeah. Like, it's not designed to feel bad, or else this fucking machine wouldn't be as successful as it is, right? But what it does is even well-meaning people can get sucked into it, and it changes everything. And that's what I'm saying. Like, it's not just, if before we were mid-century type consumers of politics, right? Mm-hmm. Now this machine, this digital machine, and everything that is kind of it's building and growing, and I don't know, that's everything that's metastasizing in this thing is like something else. It's like a different version of consumption that, like, I don't know exactly what to make of it, other than it's real easy to get lost in all the sauce.
And to bring it back to the LaRoucheites, there's something very appealing about hidden knowledge. And you talked about this with the Confucianism. Like, contradictory ideas are very appealing. Because you feel like there is something there. There is truth there. And if you've ever spent any time like going down any rabbit hole, when you try to find the truth about even not crazy things, there's so much contradiction. Anytime you look into a court case, the defense and the prosecution, they're like, oh, wow, you both make compelling points.
Exactly.
And so you feel like because of this contradiction that is there, you're more likely to find the truth there.
Yeah.
Or one side has to be right, as opposed to any kind of understanding of how to resolve that contradiction.